And today what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to measure objects to the nearest whole unit, half unit, and 1/4 unit. And by following this lesson today, you will be able to successfully measure objects in our homework assignment that we'll be posting, that you'll be doing in Microsoft Forms. Basically the same thing. You'll be seeing pictures of objects, and there'll be a ruler next to it. Your job will be to measure to the nearest whole unit, half unit, and 1/4 unit. So the unit that we're using right now is inches. This is a ruler with inches on it. So whatever I'm measuring is going to be in either whole unit, whole inches, half an inch, or 1/4 of an inch. So the first thing I want to do is I've got this random green rock that I have, and I'm going to move it over just so that it's perfectly lined up with the ruler. I always want to have my ruler and my object starting at the very same place so that my ruler will accurately measure the length of whatever object I'm measuring. The next thing I want to do is, with my mind, or if I have a little drawing tool, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw a line straight down, as straight as I can, to where the ruler is showing the length of this object. So right now, the object looks like it's over 3 inches, but not quite 4 inches long. My first task is to measure to the nearest whole unit. The whole units on this thing are going to be the 3 and the 4. So I want to decide if this object is closer to 3 or closer to 4. When I look at it, it's pretty clear it's closer to 3 units. So I'm going to go ahead and say that this object is 3 inches long first. Nearest to the whole unit is 3 inches long. The next thing I want to do is I want to look at it to see whether it's closer to the nearest half inch or to the nearest 1/4 inch unit. So what I'm going to do is, now the one thing to remember when we're talking about half inch units is that not only are the middle of the ruler a half inch, but you can also, now let me draw a couple lines here to show you. Every mark here that's whole is also part of the half inch. So it could be 3 inches, then to add another half, it could be 3.5 inches. To add another half, it's 4 inches. To add another half, it's 4.5. And that one's not as good because I didn't really get close to it, but you can kind of see how if you're measuring to the nearest half, it doesn't have to be 3.5. It could be 3 or it could be 4. But in this case, you can see it's pretty close to 3.5 inches. So I'm going to measure this one as 3.5 inches. Now here's something I noticed, boys and girls. Now when I look at this, the next is the 1/4 or 1/4 unit measurements. Now the 1/4 unit measurements for this thing are basically 3. You could add 1/4 and you get 3 1/4. You could add another 1/4, you get 3.5. You could add another half or 1/4 inch, you get 3 3/4, or you could go all the way to 4 by adding another 1/4 unit, 1/4 unit. So what I'm going to look at now is decide whether my nearest 1/4 inch measurement is going to be 3 1/4 inches or 3.5 inches. Either one is going to be to the nearest 1/4 inch. So what I'll do is I'm going to just clear all that out so I can kind of clear again. I'm going to draw my line straight down. And that wasn't very good on this one. I need to make that one a little bit straight. Excuse me. A little bit straighter. Now I go down to this one, boys and girls, and it is pretty close in between there. So what I would do is, it looks like it's a little bit, wow, that's dead on in the middle there. So what I do is when it's like that, you know, I tend to go with, if it's exactly halfway, go with the larger unit of measurement, which is 3.5. Now 3.5 is still to the nearest 1/4 inch, boys and girls. You're just basically measuring it to the nearest 1/4 inch. Now, if this were just a little bit, let's say, closer to the 3 1/4, then I would measure this as 3 1/4 inches. Now, that's one example. Miss Garcia is going to give us another example. We're going to walk through this one. What I'm going to do is clear out the screen really quick. And then what I'll do is I'll put it back with the ruler. And today we are going to pick Headless Princess Leia to measure. Now,
Right.
and go ahead, Miss Garcia.
Okay. Well, first I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room. She doesn't have a head. That's interesting. But all right, so we are going to start with making sure that it is all at 0. Now, Mr. Yates lined it up a red line on the lined sheet of paper, and both her feet as well as the ruler. So just try to get it as close as you can, boys and girls. And then your second part is going to be to just draw a line straight down from the end of your object as to long enough to where you can see it on the ruler. So our first step is going to be looking at it to the closest whole inch. Now, this one's going to be a little bit different than the last one because we are going to be using, it looks like we are pretty close to our 3 instead of our 2 would only be like right at her wrists, and our 4 would be maybe calculating if she had a head. But it looks like she's about 3 inches looking at it to our nearest whole inch. So that is going to be, for your whole inch, is going to be 3. And you want to make sure that you guys are writing down the inches as well, because that's really important. It's your unit of measurement. Now we are going to be looking at the nearest half. So your nearest half could include, I guess you could use the 2.5 and your 3.5, just like Mr. Yates is showing us right there, and your 3 as well, because it can be considered half an inch between 2.5, 3, and then your 3.5. So to me personally, it looks like it is closest to our 3 again, because our 2.5, it's like a little bit lower than her shoulders, and our 3.5, it's just a little bit too far. It wouldn't be the most accurate. So I'm going to go ahead and say it's our 3 inches, and good job labeling that as inches. And we are going to now be looking at it from our closest 1/4 inch, which that would also be 3 as well, as Mr. Yates wrote down, because honestly, everything's like pretty much at that 3 mark. And yeah, just make sure you guys are labeling it with inches. And yeah, so on to our next example.
Okay. Now we have a super hot pepper that Mr. Yates picked from the garden, guaranteed to make you cry. And all right, let's go ahead and we'll take a look at this one. On this, we're going to be drawing our line straight down. And I want to really make sure that I'm looking at it very accurately. So I want to really kind of make sure that I'm thinking pretty much right about there, I think that's what we got. All right, so when I look at it, it looks like when I measure to the nearest whole inch, it's close to 1 inch. So this red hot pepper is basically going to be measuring 1 inch to the nearest whole unit. When I look at it again, and I've got to be really careful that I hold on to my paper so it doesn't move. Here is 1/4 of an inch right here. Here is 1 inch. This thing is just about between, it's at 1/8 of an inch. It's between 1 whole inch and 1/4 of an inch. Whenever it's about halfway exactly like this, I tend to go with the larger unit of measurement. So I'm going to say that this is 1¼ inches to the nearest 1/4 inch. Now I kind of skipped over the 1/2 inch accidentally, boys and girls, because I wasn't thinking. So that's the nearest 1/4 of an inch. Now, when I look at this here, and I look, even though it's pretty close to 1/4 of an inch here over, if I measure to the nearest 1/2 inch, it's still really just 1 inch is the closest, because 1/2 is pretty far away here, and this 1/2 inch is pretty far away, but the nearest 1/2 inch measurement is the 1 whole inch. So to the nearest 1/2 inch, this is still 1 inch. I'm going to clear this out. We'll do one more thing. Let's do Freaky Gorgon figure from an ancient Roman temple in England. And that actually is super close to what we've been doing before, 3 inches. Everything seems to be 3 inches. So instead of doing freaky Gorgon figure, let's try to find something that's a little bit, oh, this is good. This is a medicine packet from the 19th century. And this might give us another type of measurement that we could use right now. So Ms. Garcia, do you want to help walk you through measuring this one?
Yeah, so our first step is to make sure that they are both as close to that 0 line as possible, just so that they match up to where we can get a really accurate measurement. So looking at our whole number, so it looks like the nearest whole number that this would be to is, well, you first want to draw that line just to like show where our end measurement's going to be. Yep, just like so. That was legit, like almost like perfect. Like you drew that like so perfectly. So looking at it, our nearest whole number would probably be our 2 because it's like just slightly a little bit bigger. But if we did it to 1, it would only be about like not even 3/4 of it, and 3 is just way too large. So make sure you guys are labeling it with inches. So to the nearest whole number, it would be 2 inches.
Oh,
And our next one.
Let me just move it back. I kind of slipped when I was, okay.
Alrighty, so then our next one is going to be to the nearest 1/2 inch. So our 1/2 inches is that we're gonna be looking at, it's gonna be 1 1/2, and then our 2, and then our 2 1/2. Now our 2 1/2 is too far. Our 1 1/2, it wouldn't measure the entire thing. So to the nearest 1/2 inch, it would probably be 2 inches, because it's the closest one and it would give us the most accurate. So 2 inches is going to be to the nearest 1/2. Now we're going to go ahead and look at our 1/4 inch. So our 1/4 inch is going to be 1 3/4, and then you also can use your 2, and then 2 1/4. But it looks like it is almost, it's like really, really close to our 1 3/4 inches, or 2. So I would say that it's like 1 1/4 inch, and 3/4 inches. Yep, just like so. And just make sure, just like Mr. Yates is writing right now, make sure you guys are labeling it each time with those inches. And so yeah, that concludes that example.
So boys and girls, now we've gone over a couple of examples. What we're going to do is ask you to go find find the assignment that is on Microsoft Forms. It's on your daily agenda. You're going to see pictures just like this with different objects, and we'd like you to go ahead in Forms to type to the nearest inch, the whole unit, to the nearest 1/2 inch, and also to the nearest 1/4 inch. And then go ahead and submit that. That'll be your assignment for Tuesday, April 14th. All right, boys and girls, we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.